Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. I'm Steve Fuller here with Sharmaine Kelly from the US. I'm very much looking forward to it. Sharmaine, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's a good day on this 22nd. It's actually one of my best friend's birthday, so it's definitely going to be a good day.
Good, 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 good,
Excited to
good.
be here.
Lovely, thank you. We're just going to wait for a few more people to join on with all these things. As I'm sure you can appreciate, people might be finishing up doing what they're doing in general. Um, yeah, while we're waiting, any holidays planned for the year? Going anywhere nice in general?
Yeah, one of my friends is having like a anniversary get back together, so we're all going to the Dominican Republic well, it's a US holiday, Memorial Day.
Yes.
We're going there for a few days, so taking the family with me this time. I didn't take them when I went for the wedding, so taking them with me this time. It should be a nice family vacation for all of us.
Good, 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 good. All right.
Yeah.
Well, look, we're at a decent amount of numbers now, so we're going to kick off. So for those of you who don't know, my name's Steve Fuller, and I'm the Global Community Manager for Race and STEM. For those who aren't familiar with what Race and STEM is, we're a global community network initiative to seek, encourage, inspire within a platform people of color within the world of STEM. What we do is we look to explore individual journeys within the industry, delving into different social demographic groups to foster meaningful conversations about identity, which I personally believe is really, really important. So with that being the case, here today, I'm joined by Sharmaine Kelly, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for just shy of 2 years now, maybe 18
Yeah,
months
'cause I
to
think
two
it was
years.
2021. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've kept in touch, obviously, over the year and a half to 2 years. And I've known you within your career, what you're doing at the moment. But to kick things off, and the listeners will get to know a little bit more about you momentarily. To
Mhm.
start this conversation, Charmaine, going straight in, something quite hard hitting. What do you think people most often misunderstand about racism and discrimination in the industry today?
I think that people they don't see race. They look at it they don't necessarily recognize the culture, the ethnicity that comes with that individual, which in hindsight makes them, you know, have these prejudgments about them. And whether it comes to, different microaggressions that they're giving, prejudices that they're already giving, they don't see the individual as for their ethnicity, for their culture, and as a human being as well.
Mm, okay, interesting. We'll get more into that in a short while, but over this question and answer session, for the next half an hour to 40 minutes, tell us a little bit about you, your background, where you're from, and a little bit more about your upbringing. A bit of a four-in-one question there, but tell us about you.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised here. I'm still here in Durham, North Carolina. I did go away for college, went to North Carolina A&T, and also and then transferred and finished at Shaw University with a bachelor's degree. A lot of my background is tied to my family. I grew up with a single mother, who recently passed away about a year ago, from MS. Well, not necessarily from MS, but as everyone knows, with multiple sclerosis, the complications that come with having
Mhm.
MS, and she's had it since I was 12 years old. So being her caretaker from a young age definitely defined me of who I am. It always made me want to work in healthcare in some form or fashion. Um, but being there for her, having gone with her, because we were very involved in the MS Society, going to conferences, speaking engagements that she used to have, being on panels, just going to support meetings. It's always given me a heavier background in healthcare that not everyone would typically have if you're not growing up with a sick parent.
Mm,
And having had, having had those experiences throughout my life has always given me a care hard kind of attitude when it comes to everyone.
Mm, powerful stuff. And sorry to hear about obviously the loss of your mother there. Um, it's a clear indicator, the real raw passion for why you wanted to work in healthcare, as you said. With
Hmm.
that being the case, tell us about your career, your education, and how you established your career within sciences, which is obviously part of the STEM movement, if you will.
Yeah, so my college journey isn't like the normal. I completed 3 years at North Carolina A&T, but I did stop. Had my two babies and then went back to college because I knew that I knew I needed to have my education in order if I wanted to excel. When I did go back and finish, I was working at Duke University at the time and was able to have kind of a hands-on experience seeing individuals that were coming in, either for outpatient visits or because we had clinical research. One of the sites was in our actual facility. So
Hmm.
being able to, converse with them, talk with them, they gave me a lot of insight into clinical research, talking with the CRA. And then I actually got into the industry, just through making connections with people and was able to meet a recruiter while I was working who helped me get into the industry and get my foot in the door because getting your foot in the door is always the hardest part when it comes to getting into clinical research. So when I finished school about May, it was May 2011. I met her around the summertime, just started having those conversations and she helped get me in to my first position where I
Hmm.
was working more so on the operations side. And from there transitioned over to a permanent position in quality and have stayed with quality ever since.
Mm.
Because I've been in quality for about a decade now, in the industry for a little over a decade. I started it was in 2011. Towards the end of 2011 is when I started. Um, I have really been fortunate in my career to meet a lot of great people and be able to network. Although I'm kind of an introvert on the inside, and when it comes to my career, I can definitely have my extroverted ways because I've always wanted to excel in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
So, having the opportunities that I had while I was working at the first company I was at for about 6.5 years, and then, progressing over the years, having some really good mentors has truly helped me to excel as far as I have as well. People opening doors from connections that I've made, and, continuing those connections has helped to open additional doors as well.
Yeah, it's lovely to hear. Taking, the typical phrase, um, it's who you know,
It really
uh,
is who you know.
who
Yeah.
you know, not necessarily the what you know. Obviously, in your industry, it is what you
Mhm.
know because it's very prevalent and very important within healthcare. But it's great to hear that people have been able to open up doors for you to walk through to the stage where you are now. And correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
you've worked within research as well as pharma and biopharma, am I right? Or
Yeah, so I've worked on the more so people know it's like the CRO side on the or the sponsor side. I've had experience on both sides and currently now working on the sponsor side in the GCP arena. Most the breadth of my experience has been in GCP. I know a little bit about GMP and learning some GLP over the past year, but definitely the breadth of it has been within the GCP arena.
okay, the clinical practice side of things.
Yeah.
You spoke about persistence, and progressing your career in a direction which has obviously got you to where you are now.
Hmm.
We're currently in coming towards the end of Black History Month, which is specifically to the US. Obviously, in the UK, it's in October. Um, but the focus or the title for this year in America is based on resistance.
Hmm.
What does resistance look like through your eyes, Charmaine? From both a personal and professional perspective. You've already given a really good insight as to your upbringing, linking it back to your mum and, the upbringing that you had to a single parent. What does resistance look like through your eyes?
I think for me, resistance is not seeing the error of our ways. There has been a lot of conversations now, especially with what's happening in the U.S. They're really trying to take away in certain states, diversity and inclusion programs. And those are the type of programs that get us indoors. And in my eyes, the resistance of we're making so much progress
Mm,
over, the past decades. And once they start to see the progress, it's like, wait a minute, let's do some things to try to push back, because when you they don't want to give us but so much power.
mm,
But I think, as long as we're continuing to stand up for what we know is right, continuing to push the legislator, pushing programs, even if we're coming down to schools, um, you know, employee resource groups that are within companies that are pushing diversity and are not resisting it, we'll continue to fight the fight for the next day. But resistance really, to me, is people that are wanting to stop the progress that we have gotten thus far. We've made progress, but there's still such a long way to go, especially from a cultural and systematic perspective.
you spoke about pushing those doors. Um, how do you push in a way which is going to be received from those
Mhm.
who are, against the D&I and the whole inclusion equity space? How do you push against those organizations, those people, those governing bodies to do it in a way in which we can be heard?
Yeah, I think that comes from leadership. Having the right people in the right places will open doors and to make changes. If we're not, if granted, a lot of small people can make a lot of change, but if there isn't a particular one person or a particular group or a collective of people that have some type of power that can make a change,
Mm,
then we're only going to see but so much progress. That's why, we'll talk about it at home. When it comes to your local legislation, that matters just as much as your higher legislation as well, like your president and those aspects. When you look at who's really going to be making the decisions in your neighborhood, your mayor, things like that, though, that's where we have to push to make sure the people that are in charge are the right people in charge, who are not going to set us back 10, 20 years from
mm,
where we were.
mm. I've spoken to a number of people globally of color,
Hmm.
and they have some have a mindset of, you know, they're tired. They've been pushing for so long.
Hmm.
They've been trying to make change for so long. They've
Hmm.
resisted. They've persisted,
Hmm.
and they're tired of talking. They're tired of it. What would you say? Obviously I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here now, but what would you say to fellow people of color within STEM who have and they feel that they're tired basically of pushing? How would you encourage them to continue?
I think that what pushes me to not have that mindset is thinking of future generations.
Hmm.
If as much progress as my parents or grandparents have played, throughout the years, and me thinking back to, stories of my grandmother and my grandfather and my mom taking a trip to, as when my mom was a kid, taking a trip to South Carolina and them going to the hotel at Myrtle Beach and getting denied entry just because of the color of their skin.
Mm,
But now anybody can just book a trip on Expedia to go to Myrtle Beach. Those are those small but big examples are why we can't stop the fight. We, even if we grow tired, and there's been a lot of times where there are expats that are moving and leaving the United States because they are tired. And I get that, especially if you've been through a very traumatic experience or have had multiple of them. When
Hmm.
you can go somewhere that's not going to judge you based
Mm.
on the color of your skin, that's a huge relief to take off of your shoulders,
Yeah,
that you can just live freely without being judged every moment of your life.
yeah,
But also, what about the people that are still there? We still have to, we can't stop fighting at all. We have to, think about the future, think about the future generations. I think about my own kids in a sense. I have two, young Black girls. There's only so much that I can say, oh, I'm tired. They're going to be the ones out in the workforce in a few years. We can't not give up.
yeah. And you know what, we need to celebrate as well
Hmm.
the wins that we have, had, the obvious being a Black president, you know,
Hmm.
and then other, in the UK anyway, first Asian prime minister currently,
Yeah, yeah.
2023 here. Um, but yeah, there's some encouraging words there, thinking of the future. I think that's the main thing
Hmm.
I'll take about that. That's the reason to keep pushing. Have you yourself encountered any resistance in your professional career?
I would say I've been fortunate. I haven't encountered a lot of resistance. I can say, I haven't always. I've had some good managers and bad managers throughout the years. But from like a career ladder perspective, I understand. When I can reflect back and think about how far that I have gotten over the years. I do, and a lot of that comes from, I learned early on, if I'm not happy somewhere, and I think this is a millennial thing compared
Mm,
to the older generation, if I'm not happy somewhere, I'm gonna leave.
mhm,
I'm not gonna stick around to allow somebody to, either be, to pass microaggressions or to, give me bad management, not give me opportunities. Because I'm always the employee that's gonna want to learn more and want to get those experiences. And if I see that you're not going to be giving them to me, somebody else is going to.
mm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, I'm sure you will know of people who have, but that's obviously their story to tell.
Hmm.
And long may it continue that you don't have, any resistance. And if there is, then at least people will be able to hear what the issues might be and be able to again open those doors for you to make the change.
Yeah.
If we're looking at identity, moving on,
Hmm.
what's your thoughts on living in an overly racialized society? Are or overly racialized working world in general? Is it something which is current and happening?
I think that it can honestly be kind of, from one perspective, it's really good that, we're talking about race, but then,
Mm,
from what you were saying earlier, it can be kind of exhausting when you're constantly trying to explain for yourself who you are, why you are, why you are worthy. Why am I worthy of it, even having this conversation just because I have some melanin in my skin?
mhm,
That shouldn't make a difference to others. But, I think over the years it has gotten more in our face, which is honestly needed. I think it's not necessarily directed towards us,
mm,
but when we're always constantly talking and having conversations about diversity, inclusion, race, ethnicity, and color, we're putting it in the face of people that are non-POCs, which helps them to understand our perspective and where we're coming from, because we're already going to know, because they're the norm, especially here in the US. The norm is, um not the marginalized community, but the larger population, which is the white community.
Mm.
Everything is always, majority of the time, it's typically geared towards them, whether you're speaking of television shows or down to the food that you eat. It's typically geared towards the white population. So when we're, talking about race and, having those conversations, it does help to change the agenda in some form or perspective.
Mm. Linking things back to STEM, so within science, tech, engineering, and math, how does personal identity intersect with STEM, do you think?
I think because there's not a lot of us in STEM, that's where, personal identity can come from. When you're working, or, at conferences or different places, and you don't see anyone that looks like you, um, as uncomfortable as you think it wouldn't make someone, it definitely can make you feel a little out of place when you don't have anyone that you can relate to on a personal perspective.
Mhm.
Or, when you do see someone, everyone's like, I know you, I see you. Like when you see another POC, or, especially for us, seeing another Black person, it makes you give a level of comfort in the room. So definitely, I think that with more conversations, we can get more people of color in leadership roles, which would help to expand and open doors. Like I know that a lot of companies now are reaching out to HBCUs. They're trying to connect with Black organizations that are in STEM
Mhm.
to help stream those pipelines, which I think is really good,
Mm.
but we still have a long ways to go. More so, I'm just thinking of like the group Black Women in Clinical Research. They have made a lot of sponsorships with sponsor companies,
Mhm.
and with that, it definitely is going to open more doors for women for women of color to be able to get jobs that we typically would probably be overlooked upon when you're applying. I
Mhm.
think, even going back to, thinking of when you're filling out an application, why do we still have to know about the person's race? What does it matter? Like you're just doing, in my eyes, this is just for a statistic perspective, and you want to make sure that you know the number of people that are at your company.
Mm.
And thinking of, let me make sure I can have a certain percentage of individuals that are people of color at the company, and not necessarily just looking at the individual in the application.
Yes. Um, you spoke about people of color, the lack of within STEM in general,
Hmm.
and how you can be, how they can be elevated to very senior positions. You spoke about, what was the group was it called? HS, the
The Black Women in Clinical Research, that group.
no, there's one that you spoke about where companies are reaching out to organizations for Black talent or people of color talent.
Um,
Was it HSBU or something like that?
oh, you mean they're HBCUs. Those are historically Black colleges and universities.
Right.
So
Okay.
companies are trying to connect with more HBCUs for talent.
Okay. See, that's something very interesting, I feel,
Hmm.
to be able to tap in and to use, the education system
Hmm.
to be able to help engineer and change the identity of what STEM looks like from a colorful perspective, and moving the minorities to something which is, not so much of a minority in general.
Right.
Um, that can also, form a lot of microaggressions in general, however, you
Hmm.
know, what effect can microaggressions have on career progression within the industry? And if you take that question coming from the grassroots education perspective, following through, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's a good question.
Go
Uh,
for it.
You got me on that so let me take that in two parts.
Yeah.
I think for HBCUs, for companies that are connecting with HBCUs, I do think that is a great opportunity. It's allowing for us to, college students, whether they're, grad students or, in college, just graduating, getting them internships and getting them in the door and in front of places and
Hmm.
getting them in the rooms of individuals who can remember their name, remember their transcript, remember their CV, so that, once they do graduate, they can have a foot in the door, or, just even having that on your resume for the future
Hmm.
will help as well to open a door, whether it's, a door that you want to get to with a large company or with a local company as well. I can say for myself, I've definitely had a lot of microaggressions over the years that I
Yeah.
have dealt with. You know, whether it be in regards to, me changing my hair or,
Okay.
not, I can think of a time where it's, oh, you're not smiling today. Is something wrong? No, I don't want to smile all the
Mm,
time.
mm.
Or, or your clothes, things like that. I think that we have a ways to go when it comes to microaggressions. I think
How do you deal with those when you hear those things? About your hair, about you
I
smile. What do you do with that?
honestly, I take note of it. I won't say that I'll, necessarily be confrontational in the moment. Um, but I take note of it, and it helps for it makes me, see that person for who they kind of are
Okay.
when they're judging me on my hair or making comments about it. Because I mean, I'll change my hair up all the time. I might wear braids. I
Mm.
might wear my hair down, might wear it up. But I
Likewise.
think that yeah, right. So I think the fact that we even have to have conversations about a Black woman's hair is just frustrating in itself. Why does
Hmm.
my hair matter when Susan's hair in the corner doesn't matter at all? What other can wear whatever color they want. But let's say I learned from early on. I had a lot of older people telling me, you gotta you gotta come, looking in a professional look. I think that over the years I've stopped caring.
Yeah.
Once you start to gain experience over the years, I really don't care anymore what someone says about my hair. I
Mm.
can, I'll either say something back, or will, let it roll off my shoulders. But, thinking about, I'm not sure if you're aware, like in the US, there are a lot of states, and more so, I believe here in North Carolina, we have such things as the Crown Act, where you can't be discriminated in the workplace based on your hair.
Okay. Look at that. I mean, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, Charmaine, I believe that I could have a meeting, discussion, webinar, in live podcast, channel, radio show, TV show, and speak to a lot of Black women about hair.
Mhm.
It's a topic in its own, it's got
Mhm.
its own area for
It
discussion.
really does. Yeah.
And the understanding of the history, where it's come from, the reasons why,
Mhm.
it's very sensitive,
Mhm.
to a lot of people. But you're clearly someone who deals with things in a certain way, not to be confrontational, as you just mentioned, regarding the microaggressions. You said
Mhm.
you take note, you kind of register it, and you're able to
Mhm.
use that as a pinpoint for seeing people who they really are. For somebody who is potentially not as confident or measured as yourself through experience, let's say, for example, somebody who is, just starting their career within
Mhm.
STEM at stereotypical age of 22, 23,
Mhm.
24, what could be the cost of ignoring microaggressions to those individuals who are younger and they're starting their careers in general? What
I
could be
think
the cost of ignoring?
I think the cost of ignoring is that it continues. Um, and that it could build, depending on who you're dealing with, in that position, it could build to be something larger.
Mm,
The microaggressions might start off, with just talking about someone's hair, but then it could escalate to talking about, someone's personal life, judging them for, what they did on the weekend. The escalation of microaggressions going into more little things to more larger racial discrimination
mm,
is where I think that, we can't afford to not say something. I think that, when I was first starting out, we didn't have those, the backing wasn't necessarily there,
mm,
especially from like a HR perspective where you could
mhm.
go and, make a complaint. But I think that over the past 5, 6 years, there has been so much education when it
Yeah,
comes to microaggression, and having, conversations like this points out, that microaggressions do exist. And if we don't say something about it, then, you're kind of shorting yourself by allowing it to continue. And then it can also lead to, not wanting to work at the company anymore. You don't, if what if you have to work with this person on a project?
yeah,
If you're not addressing it with them, you're going to continue to hear it. And, which might lead to, you actually blowing up and, having an argument with them unnecessarily because you didn't address it in the moment and continue to let it go on. I think the points of escalation as to how you want to deal with it as a new employee, whether you're bringing it to your manager for them to address, or, whether you want to talk about it with a fellow teammate, or, bringing it to HR. I think how you deal with it, um, depends on the outcome that you might have.
okay, okay. Thanks for that.
Mhm.
Um, Coming towards the end of our question and answer session, which
Oh yeah, it is like 10:16.
it's been time for a cup of tea. I want to ask you. You're obviously a woman who's got children, experience within industry. What are your hopes for the future within,
Um,
people to come for you in general within STEM?
yeah, my hopes for the future is that we can, for individuals that are like my age, we can get in more leadership positions. So that way, when people that are my kids' age, when they really are starting to get in the workforce, we can open those doors for them. Because we're
Mm,
not going to judge individuals based on, what college they went to. Sometimes you're judged just because you went to an HBCU. I'm a proud HBCU alum.
mm,
But not every non-POC even understands what a HBCU stands for. Um, so I think having, um, you know, wanting for the future for there to be more doors open so that my kids can have better opportunities that I did.
yeah, that's we always want better for our offspring,
Yeah.
don't we? Um,
I
I
always
think,
tell my kids to be better than me, don't be like me.
yeah, 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 100%. I agree. Um, in hearing you in speaking with other panelists, other speakers, um, one thing in which I would also like to add in terms of, a bit of knowledge or information is to seek out groups, whether they're on LinkedIn, whether they're on whatever forum it is, professional groups where you can also identify a sponsor, or a mentor, somebody who can
Mhm.
help you navigate your road to where you want to get to. Um, and, through opening those doors will be open, things come back round,
Mhm.
strong believer in that. Um, so look for mentors, sponsorships, groups, communities where you can discuss microaggressions with each other.
Yeah.
Discuss identity with each other. You can discuss tokenism with each other.
Hmm.
And somebody who is 60 will be able to advise somebody who's 40. Somebody who's 40 who's more in tune with what's happening in the world, might be able to advise that person who's 20, whether you're male or female, however you identify yourself as. So thank you, Sharmaine.
Yeah.
I've very much enjoyed it. I'm very appreciative of you taking some time out from your very busy schedule. I can appreciate to talk to me today in representation of race and STEM, and obviously Black History Month there. Thank you very much. So with that being the case, we're going to bring this discussion to an end. Please look out to all of our followers, more LinkedIn live sessions, more discussions via podcast, webinars, in-person events on a global scale for race and STEM. We do look to impact and have a massive change on our industry as we look to empower and help educate those mindsets within the STEM sector specifically, but in general in life. So thank you, Sharmaine. And,
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
and we'll catch up on the other side soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Take care.
Thanks.